Oh, hi. What you're witnessing is called a panic attack. I got a letter in the mail that said I was selected to redesign New Hampshire Motor Speedway. It's like dirty duty for race fans. Problem is that it's due tomorrow, and I've just been too busy to do it. That's not holding. Gotta be kidding me.
A racetrack is like a house. Over time, things become a little dated and you need to do a little renovation. Some new paint, a new sink, a jacuzzi in the driveway. I don't think the HOA is gonna like that. Racetracks are no different. You might redesign a track to improve the racing, the safety, or just because you feel like it. Through the years, the tracks on the NASCAR schedule have seen plenty of facelifts. These range from minor adjustments to full-on overhauls. So let's go over all the levels of the NASCAR track redesign.
Nivel 1.
A level 1 redesign is usually pretty tame. These redesigns don't really affect the overall racing and instead change other aspects of the track. For example,
moving the start-finish line.
One of these migrating finish lines was at Darlington Raceway. In 1997, they wanted to build a much larger main grandstand. Problem was, well, there wasn't much space. To work around that, the backstretch would now become the front stretch, and what you once knew was turn 1, well, that's now turn 3.
It's like if your friend changed genders. I still love you, I'm just gonna fuck up your name for a few months.
Another track that moved its start-finish line was Phoenix Raceway. Originally, the line was here, and in 2018, it was moved in between the exit of what was turn 2 and the dogleg. Now, why did they do this?
Well, the then president of the track said that would make for an exciting finish. Translation, they wanted the drivers to dive bomb the shit out of each other.
This also took place during the track's big renovation, so now the grandstand with the start-finish line had the fans in the shade, where previously it had fans in, well, I wouldn't call it comfortable conditions. But during that renovation, Phoenix got another type of the level 1 redesign, the pit road. Now, there's a few ways to go about changing the pits. What they did here was modifying it to have a much tighter radius back into the infield. But the more popular way of changing pit road was
murder!
Yes, the death of the dual pit road. Back in the day, it was more common for tracks to have 2 separate pit lanes to accommodate the whole field. In 1999, both Darlington and Martinsville had their backstretch pit roads removed, with Darlington adding more stalls at the exit of turn 3 and Martinsville adding them along all the corners. Then there's Sonoma. Up until 2001, the track had what was called Gilligan's Island, a short stretch of pits that sat right across from the main pit road. The 9 slowest qualifiers would pit here, and because of the shorter length, NASCAR would hold these drivers for an extra 18 seconds as a nerf. In 2002, they would extend the main pit road past the start-finish line, killing the need for it.
Livello 2.
A level 2 redesign makes bigger changes to the track while retaining the same layout. One of these changes is to the banking. Increasing or decreasing the banking in the corners can severely change how a track races. One of the more recent examples is to Atlanta Motors Echo Park Speedway.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna call it Atlanta.
In 2021, Atlanta's surface was showing its age, and despite some people saying, "You better not repave that track, I don't care it takes twice as long to dry in a rain delay, I'm stubborn as fuck." Well, they repaved it. But during the planning, they looked at Daytona and Talladega and said, what if we had more of that? So they narrowed up the racing surface, increased the banking to 28 degrees, gave the cars a superspeedway package, and bam! You got yourself a mini superspeedway. When this was first announced, NASCAR fans said,
fuck.
And after the first race on the new reconfiguration, they said,
fuck. That wasn't that bad. Now I need something else to complain about.
Honestly, with the state of how superspeedway racing is now, Atlanta actually is the best one now. But as the track ages, we'll probably see it slowly turn back into the racing we used to see there. In 2006, Las Vegas Motor Speedway increased its banking from 12 degrees to 20. They also gave it a level 1 redesign in the pits by changing it from a straight pit lane to a curved one. Now, drivers at the time weren't too thrilled about the banking change, with Tony Stewart famously saying,
"It's just a shame. I mean, they had a really nice facility here, and Chris Powell and their staff really destroyed a really nice racetrack because they were afraid we were all getting strung out."
And Tony was kinda wrong. The drivers did have a case that year with the new surface being paired with an extremely hard tire compound, which made the racing treacherous. But over time, I think the track with higher banking is far more entertaining than the original.
Up next is Texas Motor Speedway. Oh Jesus, this fucking track. Texas has had a very, we'll call it, interesting past with its banking. The track had to reprofile the transition out of Turn 4 after just 1 year of racing for being too abrupt, which caused wrecks. This only led to more problems as it added a new bump in the corner, which made the already sketchy surface worse. Now, when drivers complained about this, track president Eddie Gossage thought it was a great idea to sell shirts that read "Shut Up and Race." Safe to say this wasn't received well, and they repaved the entire track the next year. After years of what was at best mediocre racing, the track was repaved with a change in banking in mind. Turns 1 and 2 would be widened an extra 20 feet, and the banking decreased from 24 degrees to 20. Meanwhile, turns 3 and 4 would get absolutely nothing changed to it.
Now, having different levels of banking on opposite sides of the track may improve the racing on Halo tracks, but it's not a guarantee that it'll work in real life.
Texas is still one of the more hated tracks on the schedule, at least fan-wise. I'd ask the drivers, but there's this pesky thing called restraining orders. Let's talk about progressive banking, a type of banking where the higher you climb the track, the steeper it gets. This provides multiple racing grooves, so you can take the low lane a shorter way around the corner but with less banking, or you can take a higher lane which is longer in distance but has higher banking, which allows you more momentum on the exit of the turn. One of the more popular tracks to experiment with it is Homestead Miami Speedway. Up until 2002, Homestead had a measly 6 degrees of banking in its turns. This produced dull, hard-to-pass, single-groove racing. But in 2003, the people at Homestead said no more, and they cranked that sucker up! Now we got a variable 18 to 20 degrees of banking, multiple racing lines, and side-by-side action!
It's so fucking good!
In 2012, Kansas Speedway got progressive banking going from a stable 15 degrees to a variable 17 to 20.
Again, really good.
Now, New Hampshire Motor Speedway back in the day was labeled as a little dangerous by some. This was due to its long straightaways and flat turns. So in 2002, the track owner Bob Bear said, fuck it, we're gonna make it even flatter, replacing the 12-degree turns with a progressive 2 to 7.
Okay, not as exciting, but still unique.
Then there's Bristol Motor Speedway. Now, originally, Bristol had 22-degree bank turns. Then in 1969, it was increased to 36, and for decades, everybody just rolled with that. Until one day, someone actually went and measured it to find out it was only 30. In 2007, track owner Bruton Smith had the bright idea to reprofile the track with a progressive 24 to 30-degree banking. This did not go over well.
You see, at an intermediate, single groove racing isn't that great, but at a short track it's much different because to pass someone, you gotta resort to chrome horn, get the fuck out of my way type of racing. And Bristol was famous for that.
But now we have progressive banking, which in theory should provide side-by-side racing. Problem is that the high lane was so much more dominant that everyone just migrated up there, and the classic moving a guy up a lane doesn't really work when there's a wall there. In 2012, they would mitigate this by grounding the top lane down to 28 degrees, and in later years would experiment with adding resin to the bottom lane to add more grip.
The other part of a level 2 redesign is changing what the track is made of.
Going from one type of surface to another can really change how a track races. Bowman Gray, North Wilkesboro, and Martinsville used to be dirt tracks way back in the day. There is also that weird 3-year period where Bristol was turned to dirt for one race a season. Then we have concrete. The benefit of changing the concrete is that it's much more durable. It also provides a challenge to the drivers because when you lose grip, it punishes you a lot harder than asphalt. The first track to experiment with concrete was Martinsville back in 1976. The lower lanes were constantly having to be repaved due to wear, but concrete made everyone happier. Except for Jeff Gordon in 2004, I don't think he was too pleased. Now let's go back to Bristol. From its inception up until 1991, the track was paved with asphalt, but after a total of 3 failed repaves in the late 80s and early 90s, the track threw its hands up and said, fuck it, we're made of concrete now. And in 1995, Dover Motor Speedway would also follow suit and make the switch.
Dale Earnhardt.
A level 3 redesign is when things really ramp up. This is when the shape of the track actually changes. We'll start off with a technicality because this is basically a whole new track. Richmond Raceway used to go by Richmond Fairgrounds Raceway. And Virginia State Fairgrounds. And, well, it's been through a few names. The Fairgrounds version of this track used to be a half-mile true oval, but as NASCAR was growing in the 80s, they were outgrowing some of their tracks, and this included Richmond as it could only field up to 30 cars. So in 1988, they wiped the slate clean with a brand new 3/4 D-shaped oval. On the flip side, we have a track that would downsize. Auto Club Speedway's 2-mile surface was really worn out by the end of its lifespan, so NASCAR decided that they would turn the facility into a half-mile high-bank short track. They closed the track in 2023 and started demolition, and it's definitely gonna happen.
Right? Right?
From its opening in 1960 to 1997, Echo Park Speed... No, still doesn't sound right. Atlanta was a true oval, but when the Cup Series returned for its second race in 97 for the season finale, it was now a quad oval. Now, why did they do this? Well, the quad oval allows you to add more seating in the grandstands and provides great sightlines, which would come in handy for the explosion in growth that NASCAR was facing. They would modify what was the backstretch and in the process, give it a level 1 redesign with a new start-finish line. Another oval that would change shape in 1997 was Homestead. Originally, Homestead was a rectangular-shaped track. But the track owners, who were trying to earn a Cup Series date, would come to learn that its low-banked, 90-degree angled corners didn't create the best racing and were highly dangerous as it would claim the life of John Nemechek. So they would scrap the mini Indianapolis aesthetic and transform into a true oval. When Phoenix was repaved in 2011, the track shape would change just slightly. The dogleg on the backstretch would be pushed further out, but the biggest change was the apron. They would open it up, ditch the grass, and pave all over it.
And you can run wherever you want because track limits are for pussies. Me, I'm a pussy.
Now, I'm not a racing purist, but I do think it's a bit silly you can just straight up cut the entire dogleg. But it does open up more passing, so maybe I'm just a big dumb stupid idiot. Now let's talk about the road courses. When they're redesigned, it's almost always a level 3. The most recent one was Circuit of the Americas. This year, NASCAR would ditch the full layout in favor of shorter lap times. To do this, they would move to the National Circuit. Except it's not really the National Circuit, it's basically a modified version that bypasses the awkward chicane and uses this short stretch from the Club Circuit instead. Up next is the Charlotte Roval. After its first race, they would modify the backstretch chicane in 2019 because the original one was not the best. Then in 2024, they would extend the straightaway after turn 5 that bypassed the original turns and the unused S's, which would set up a heavy braking hairpin that led back into the oval section. In addition to that, they would change the front stretch chicane to be a sharper corner.
Whether or not those changes were good is pointless because everyone just wants the oval back.
Sonoma got its first level 3 in 1998. That year they added the chute, a section that had the driver skip the carousel corner. This was done again to speed up the lap times. What some might forget is that for the first 3 years, the turn that led into the chute was a long sweeping corner. In 2001, they would modify it to a more challenging 70-degree turn. In 2019, to celebrate the track's 50th anniversary, NASCAR would return to the original layout. They would run that for a few years until people realized...
And wait a second, this kinda sucks.
So in 2022, they would move back to the chute and all was right in the world again. Then we have Watkins Glen. When NASCAR returned to the track in 1986, it looked a bit different. That's because in 1971, the track got a big overhaul. The last time they raced there in 1965, the track had a section called Big Bend. This was where the current start-finish line is, as they would also do a level 1 change as they moved the pits and start-finish line to the new straightaway. The track would stay this way until 1992, where after some serious accidents, including one that killed JD McDuffie, they would build a chicane just before the outer loop in order to slow the cars down. In conclusion, I don't know, sometimes it's good to change the track, sometimes it's not.
You know, after all that babbling, I think I finally know how I'm gonna redesign New Hampshire. First, we're gonna ignore that it already has one and we're gonna turn it into a road course. Because I feel like being a prick. We're gonna leave turns 1 and 2 the same, but now all of pit road is there. Plus, we're gonna move the start-finish line to in between the turns. Then after the backstretch, turn 3 is now a 90-degree left-hand turn. That goes straight into another straightaway. Then after that, turn 4 is now a left-hand sweeping corner that then goes immediately into a right tight hairpin. Then that's followed up by an identical left-hand sweeping corner. Then after that, we got one more right-hand turn to take us to the front stretch and we're all done.